So good morning, everyone. I want to talk today as follow on from our last call where we talked about habits and how habits can hold us back or help us to move forward in building our business. Today, we're going to get into a little bit of the science of what a habit is so that we can understand how we can change it and use habits to our advantage to build our business. The neat thing is with what we're sharing today is the changes that we make are subtle things. They're nuances, they're little behavioral adjustments, little changes that we can make in our day-to-day life that can empower us to have significant change in our outcomes. Dave mentioned just before we hit the record button, the negative impact of bad food that it can have in our body when we consume it over and over again, this compounding effect of eating the wrong stuff day in, day out. But if you were to just make that small adjustment and replace something bad with KVB, think of the compound effect that that could have over the course of our lives by having a meal replaced with the KVB, or to introduce that as a sports performance as well. If you're not losing weight, then the compound effect of that can be significant. So we want to talk about some compounding effects that we can have in our lives and in our business by making some small adjustments to the habits that we have to turn them into better habits so that we can get, of course, the better results. So I'm going to share my screen right now. I've got some slides that are prepared, and we'll go here. So I'm going to start with a quick. Bear with me one second. There we go. My cursor disappears. Okay, let me try this one more time. I'm going to have to do it that way. Okay, there we go. So I wanted to do a quick summary of what we talked about last time when we talked about habits. So as a quick review, we identified that there are 3 levels to change. There is outcome change, there is process change, and there is identity change. We identified that one of the reasons people struggle to change their habits is because they work from the outside in, focusing on changing outcomes when they should be focusing on the inside out and change the direction. The most effective way to change our habits is to focus not on what we want to achieve, but on what we wish to become. When we start there and identify first, this 2-step process, identify first what kind of person do I want to become, and then 2, identify small wins that will give evidence to us that we are succeeding. When we can do that, then we'll be on the journey, on the right path to moving towards change. We identified that identity emerges out of our habits. Every action is a vote for the type of person we wish to become. And of course, at the heart of it, jumping to the last point there, the real reason habits matter is not because they help us to get better results, although they do that. It's because they can help us change our beliefs about ourselves. When that changes, everything changes. So I said today I wanted to talk about what is a habit so we can understand how we can change them and use them for our good. So there are 4 elements to a habit: a cue, a craving, a response, and a reward. I'm going to look at each of these separately for just a second, and then look at what we can do to make adjustments to our habits. So the first is a cue. What is a cue? It's simply a bit of information that predicts a reward. The craving is the motivation behind every habit. We don't crave the habit, but we do crave the change in state that it delivers. For example, we're not motivated by brushing our teeth, but we are motivated by the feeling of a clean mouth. Yeah. And that's the same too in business, isn't it? People don't join Niken because they love and are motivated by the act of picking up the phone and making phone calls. But they are motivated by the change in state the positive reactions bring when they get new people into their business, when they get new customers. That experience of finding a new customer, of signing up a new business partner, when we start to experience that, especially if it's on a regular basis, that can be something we can really start to crave because the rewards come in thick and fast with that. The response, that's the actual habit that we perform. That can be a thought or it can be an action. Now, this is really important. If the action required, if it requires more effort than we're willing to expend, we won't do it. Action or response also depends on our ability. A habit can only occur if we're capable of doing it. For example, I'm never going to get into the habit of dunking basketballs. I don't think that's in my DNA, is it? That's not going to happen. So in order for the response to be meaningful, to occur, it needs to be within the scope of our willingness to expend the right amount of effort to do it. And it needs to, of course, be something that we can actually do. We're going to talk about that later on, of course. The last point, of course, of the habit is the reward. This is the end goal of every habit. The cue is about noticing the reward. The craving is about wanting the reward. And the response is about obtaining the reward. Okay, and here is the key point. If a behavior is insufficient in any of these four areas, it will not become a habit. If the cue isn't strong enough, it's not going to lead to any action coming out of it. If the craving isn't there, if the motivation isn't there, that's not going to happen for us either. If the action is too much, or if it's too complicated, then we're not going to follow through and get the reward. If the reward is unfulfilling, it's not going to inspire us to repeat the behavior in order to get it again and thus entrench the habit. So as we can see, as we look at these four areas of, or four components of a habit, the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward, all four of these elements need to be had or in existence in the right proportion or quantity in order for habit to occur. So how do we change our habits then? Recognizing this, we can see, because of course we do have, and let me just pause for just a second. We do have in this process, of course, both good habits and bad habits, right? There are habits that are not good, but we actually like the reward that it gives us temporarily. And that can cause a problem. That's why perhaps we eat the wrong foods.
Hearing it volume higher.
There we go. Thank you. That's why we can crave the wrong foods, because it tastes good. Oh, Madeline?
Yeah, but it's higher, so it couldn't go. I probably.
Okay, there we go.
No.
Madeline? Yeah, you're unmuting your line. Thank you. So it can work in both ways. So we need to recognize, of course, that the reward, the cue, the mechanism needs to be healthy choices. It isn't always a healthy choice. So let's jump back in here and discuss what we can do to make these adjustments in a way that is meaningful. Okay, so some simple points. In order to change the cue, the trigger, we need to make it obvious. In order to change the craving, we need to make sure that it's attractive. In order to encourage a response, we need to make it easy. And in order to improve or enrich the reward, we need to ensure that it's satisfying. So let's look here at how we can do this, because there are just some simple steps I want to cover in our call today as to how we can create new habits by making them obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. When we can do that, we can set ourselves up for some great success going into 2020. So I want to talk about the Diderot effect. I'm not sure if you've heard of this before, but I certainly love it. So Denis Diderot was a philosopher back in the 1700s. He'd spent his whole life being broke. Essentially, he didn't live a financially lucrative or successful experience. But all of that kind of changed in the year 1765. In the year 1765, his daughter was due to be married, and he didn't have the money for the wedding. This was really concerning for him. However, one thing that he was famous for, which helped in this process, was he was a major contributor in the encyclopedia of the time. And fortunately for him, Catherine the Great, who was the Empress of Russia, loved that encyclopedia and was a lover of books. And so, becoming aware of his plight, she offered to buy his entire library of books for the grand sum of $1,000. That's the equivalent in today's terms of about $150,000. Now, all of a sudden, he found that not only did he have the money for the wedding, but he also had some money to spare. So he bought himself this beautiful scarlet robe, which he absolutely loved. However, it caused a problem for him. And this is where the Diderot effect comes into play. He noticed that this beautiful, luxurious scarlet robe that he had didn't quite fit with his other possessions, which were a little bit poor, a little bit unpleasant. He said there was no more coordination, no more unity, no more beauty between the elegant robe that he had and the rest of his stuff. So what did he do? He soon felt the need to upgrade his possessions. So he replaced his rug with one from Damascus. He decorated his home with expensive sculptures. And he went on to replace the mirror on his mantle, his old straw chair with a beautiful sofa, and so on and so forth, until after a while he filled his home with beautiful possessions. This went on to become the Diderot effect, or labeled the Diderot effect in psychology. Why? Because what it highlighted was that our actions do not happen in isolation. Simple example, I brush my teeth, I go to the bathroom, that inclines me to do something next. I wash my hands. While I'm washing my hands, it reminds me that I need to do some laundry and put my towels in the washing machine. That triggers another thought. I need to get laundry detergent. I add that to my shopping list, and so on and so forth. We see there is an interconnectedness of behaviors. They don't work in isolation. We often decide what we're doing next based upon what we've just finished doing. Now, when I read that in my studies in preparation for this call, it certainly made me think of our Niken businesses. Based upon what you've just done, what are you inclined to do next? If we're in the awful malaise of having not done anything, what will we be more inclined to do next? Nothing. So this becomes really quite a sobering thought, doesn't it? In order to really move forward, we need to get ourselves into a state of motion to begin with, and then allow this Diderot effect to take root in our business. So the first point here is to make it obvious. Like I said, this is kind of step number one. We can do this by what is called habit stacking. What that means is I pair a new habit with a current one. So the most easy way to do this is to recognize the existing cues that take place already in the time and location that we already exist. So for example, after X particular habit, my existing habit, I will do this. So after I come home from work and I take off my work shoes, I will put my running shoes on and I will go for a run. When I get up in the morning and I go downstairs, when I go into the kitchen, I will have my glass of KVB. When I have my KVB, this is what I always do. I always make sure I'll take my Jade Greenzymes. And I put the two together. I put my Jade Greenzymes with my KVB and I have the two together. And I've made that a habit stack. So let's look at ways to make it obvious. When I sit down at my desk, when I pull my phone out in the morning, rather than check Facebook, I might go through my contact list and see who I'm available, who's available for me to call today. So let's pick it up and start making some habit stacks in order to make it obvious, because our existing behavior can work as triggers to create new behavior. The next thing we want to do is make it attractive. Just like we've got habit stacking, we want to do temptation bundling. So we want to pair what we do, what we want to do, with what we need to do. And the reason that this is important is because more probable behaviors, I put there probably, more probable behaviors reinforce less probable behaviors. So if I can link together something that has got a surefire outcome with something that is less certain, I'm going to be more inclined to do it. For example, if I am inclined to go on Facebook a lot, I think I've used this because I know this is a habit for a lot of people. Then if I know that I'm going to be going on Facebook today, then I can say to myself, to make my behavior more rewarding or more attractive, more appealing to me so that I'll take action, I can say, after I've made 3 calls this morning, I'll go on Facebook. Yeah. After I've made 3 calls this morning, I'll have my breakfast. After I've made 3 calls this morning, I'll reach out and get in touch with my family, for example. So we can find different ways to link the rewarding, already established behaviors that we know will give us certain results with the new behaviors so that they can get the strength in pairs. You can see the power of pairing activities here, can't you? And this is very similar to habit stacking, because we're not just stacking now the behavior, but we're also now stacking or combining the rewards or the potential outcomes to reinforce the reward mechanism. And I'll share why that's important in just a sec. We want to make it easy. This is the next step. How do we make it easy? The most effective form of learning is practice, not planning. I think there are too many of us in Nikan that are guilty of spending more time planning than we are in spending it in practice. We need to focus on taking action. Now, I like this point. Habit forming is the process by which a behavior becomes progressively more automatic through repetition. We can never form habits if we're only in the habit or practice of planning. All that we'll get into the habit of doing is planning, but that's not going to be what changes our business. We need to get into the habit of practicing the right behaviors. The amount of time that we practice and perform the habit is not as important as the number of times we spend performing it. Keep that in mind as well. We will get better at making phone calls by making more phone calls, not by sitting in front of the phone and making dials. Yeah. The more calls we make will have a greater impact on it becoming automatic and easier to be repetitive than the more time we spend planning it, thinking about it, preparing for it, and being in that space, that workspace of making the calls. Do the calls, and that's what will make it easier. So, and I don't think, I joked before, didn't I, about I'm never going to be in the habit of making slam dunks. I just don't have the height. We're fortunate here in Nikan that there is no one in this business that is really eliminated from success because it's too difficult. The behaviors that it requires of us are really kind of basic level behaviors, aren't they? It's creating a contact list, making appointments, building relationships, and delivering presentations. The bit that's hard for many is the presentation part, and we have ABCs for that, and we have teams for that. So it really comes down to our ability to build relationships. And all of us as adults have spent our whole lives building relationships. So even if we don't feel very good at that, I think all of us can admit we've got some fundamental relationships that are pretty strong in our lives that give evidence to the fact that we've succeeded at some point along the way. So again, just make it, if we want to make that easy, get into the habit of practicing building relationships and adding names to the list, making the phone calls, doing the fundamental activities. Make it easy. The last thing, of course, is to make it satisfying. And this is the point that I wanted to stress. This is really important because at the front end of the business in Nikan and in all network marketing companies is this principle of delayed gratification. We work hard for the first couple of years knowing that over time it will pay off, because that's where we get the long-term repeat income that can be generated because of the organization and team that we have built. So how do we navigate the fact that we offer delayed gratification when we have a brain that is hardwired to prefer the immediate rewards versus the delayed rewards. What we need to do is to get a habit to stick. We need to get an opportunity, find a way to immediately reward ourselves with good behavior. Look for ways to make it satisfying right now. It's been said, what gets rewarded gets repeated. And that's very true. I've also heard it said in Nikan, what we recognize gets repeated. If you want to have a great behavior repeated frequently in your business, we need to celebrate those behaviors, recognize them. Recognition plays a fundamental part. If we want to make it satisfying, either for us or for our teams, we need to look at ways to improve our recognition programs that we have within our own organizations. We can, of course, rely on Nikan for the incentives, for the recognition for monthly achievements and so on. But as leaders of our own teams, let's look at ways to recognize and celebrate the successes of others more, because I think that can really contribute to making the activities bed in and make it even stronger. So that brings us to the end of our call today. I hope we've got some ideas here that we can identify. What can I do in order to make some changes in my business, in my own life? It's really simple. Let's just make the cues a little bit more obvious. Let's make it a little bit more straightforward, a little bit easier to stack and to bundle with other existing behaviors. Let's move into that space where we can make it more easy and straightforward to do and make it more rewarding. Dr. Linda, did you raise your hand? Do you want to say something?
Yeah, Ben, you're talking about creating these activities, these behaviors, and one thing came to mind that we talked about at the conference, and that is through digital marketing and social media. So we, in other words, we had a great presentation from Bernice that when Nikan International on their social media channels post something, it's for us to like, comment, and share throughout our channels with those relationships to those people we have through our social media channels. So I think that'd be a great little activity for everybody to do too, and a very simple way to help foster and create that relationship.
Yeah, I really like that. That's a good starting point. I want to suggest two starting points as we draw the call to a close. One is to reinforce what Dr. Lynn has just said, is let's all get into the habit of not just liking the posts by Nikan International or Nikan Europe, but to like, comment, and share. When we like, comment, and share, then we can create a viral response. We will not create the viral response if we only like it.
And put your own PWP on there too. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Personalize it. Add your own links to your own shopping cart so that you can benefit from it. Don't send it to someone else's. Send it to your own shopping cart. Build your business, but create visibility around the business by liking, commenting, sharing. That's a nice, easy starting point. Yeah, we talk about making it easy. That's an easy one to do, isn't it? And I think that's good. The other one that I would suggest is it always comes back to the first steps. I can't get to step number 3 if I'm not doing steps number 1 and 2 first. I've only got little legs, so my steps are only small. Yeah. So what are the first steps? It always will come back to building our contact list. If I don't have a pipeline full of people, I'm not going to be able to squeeze people through the other end and recruit and sign up and get new customers, new business partners, if I'm not continually feeding my pipeline. I made a commitment to Dave the other day that I'm going to start feeding this pipeline more and put more people through that and start building some local activity here in Irvine. And that's one of my goals. And where does that start? If I want to change my habits, that's going to begin with adding names to the list. And I can do that in a simple way. As I go downstairs and have my KDB, that's one of the first things I do in the morning. When I do that, I can sit down and I can pull out my phone, link that existing habit to a new one, and start looking through who do I know that I can reach out to today and have immediate plans for making contacts and adding names to my list. It's a simple thing, but I do that at the morning, at the beginning of the day. That can have a huge impact on what follows there afterwards. Why? Because behaviors and activities are not performed in isolation. Once I start adding names to the list, I'm going to start doing something about it. If I start looking at who I'm going to reach out to, I'm going to start picking up the phone and making calls. When I do that, I'm going to have follow-up. Then I'm going to have presentations. Then I have people coming to meetings, and it'll all start to link together. It'll all come together. So start with something little, make it easy, make it rewarding, link it in a habit stack to existing behaviors to make it more concrete. And then, of course, like I said, add the rewards, kind of bundle the rewards as well, so that you can get an immediate sense of satisfaction and sense of accomplishment doing it. When we do this, they're little things, but it will make a big difference to our business, a huge difference. So let's start with something small, make some positive changes, and let's see what comes. And please, when this video gets posted, be sure to share it with someone too, so that people in your team can make the same decisions and make some good changes to their business and life as well. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a great day.